And we can get this conversation going. So, good afternoon, everyone, for anybody joining from the West Coast. And if you're joining from elsewhere, you might have a different time zone right now. My name is Alon Eisenstein. I'm an assistant professor of teaching at the School of Engineering at the UBC Okanagan campus. And welcome to the Germinator and for my conversation with Michael McCafferty. Before I introduce Michael, I want to quickly just give a prelude to what the Germinator is for those whose first time attending the Germinator. The Germinator is a space for conversations about people's unexpected life's journey, decisions they made, decisions they skipped over, what was in their mind when they were hesitating before they actually germinated and went above the ground, and suddenly people saw their successes. So we're focusing our attention on the thing that's under the ground that we can't see just yet before they were famous and sometime rich. I also want to begin by acknowledging that I'm physically here on the Okanagan in the city of Kelowna, and you're joining from different places around the world. And so I like to start recognizing the Indigenous and traditional ancestral caretaker of the land. In our case, it's the Syilx Okanagan people. And the name Okanagan, funnily enough, is a mispronunciation of the word Sukanakin, which was the actual word used by or still used by the Syilx people. And I thought it's very fitting for Michael being my guest today, because as you will see from Michael's story, Sukanakin was referred to the people who were essentially runners. If you showed up on the territory and you needed to get hold of somebody, the Sukanakin would know where everybody's at, and they would run physically to tell them the message that you needed them to get there, or they would run to the top of the mountain to look for where people were at. So getting hold of people is something that people have always been preoccupied with. And as you'll hear from Michael's story, he's been preoccupied with getting hold of people or finding them in effective ways other than physically running across the valley. So with that, turning to Michael, Michael has a very long history of being in the world of software. I'm super excited for my conversation. He gratefully shared with me his book that was recently authored, Startups for Love and Money. I have it here. There you go. With lots of sticky notes with things I would love to ask about. Two big elements or features in the book talk about his experience with creating PAL, the precursor, so to speak, to Google Ads over the phone. So if you call someone and you wanted to find a business in any location, the phone number you called from, your area code would tell the advertiser, or say the computer, which ad to play for you. So it's a good way of getting revenue with tailored advertising that's localized. And the second one is TeleMagic, which today everybody knows Salesforce as a CRM, as a client management software. And it's a fancy Rolodex that does a lot of things automatically. So you always keep your relationship with your customers and your clients in check, and you never skip a beat. And in both cases, again, it's all about making helping other businesses be more successful, which I found really intriguing on Michael's philosophy for doing business and his why. So let me stop sharing, and I can now officially say, welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining me on the Germinator.
Thank you for this opportunity to be of service, and thank Rick Cooper for putting me up to this.
Thank you, Rick, for the introduction. He's also on the call here.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah.
There's
Hey,
Rick.
brother, long time no see.
Long time indeed.
So, Michael, do you want to give us 10,000 foot overview of your journey in 1 minute or less? What are we going to talk
Oh,
about today? I don't know.
so
Your life story on
65
one foot.
years of entrepreneurship in how many? At 1 minute?
Sure.
Wow.
What's your one-liner?
uh, I couldn't stand working for somebody else.
Yeah. and everything else fell in place somehow.
No, I was brought up in a family where my father was an entrepreneur. He had a large Ford dealership outside of Philadelphia, and I watched all the horrors and the good stuff, watching him be involved in that. And I figured, hey, maybe I can do that. So I started businesses from scratch in college, and started about three different businesses there. And then when I got out, I got a job with IBM, and the money was just so good from Jump Street that I didn't even bother thinking about going into my own business. But that continued to stay in the back of my mind. And after 3 years with IBM and being very successful there, I decided to go out on my own. And everything went pretty well after that.
So, maybe I'll use my sheet of questions. You
Yeah.
had talked about starting right in college, and you talk about how in college you were in the bottom 10% of your class. And when
That's that would be kind.
IBM showed up, they had this policy of recruiting the top 10%. And
Absolutely.
accidentally, you just happened to walk by this door where the recruiter was, and somebody was kind of looking at you, arrogantly or patronizingly saying, "You can't be joking. You're not actually trying to get hired by IBM." And there's an interesting, somebody said, I forgot who said this, but um, that never underestimate the power of a person trying to prove the world wrong.
Hmm.
And I thought about you when I read that, you say you walking up there to an IBM recruiter and telling them you're wrong for looking for the top 10% because you won't file your salespeople there. Um, and so maybe kind of thinking about that again, and maybe kind of tying it to where you are now, right? You've been mentoring entrepreneurs since you've been retired, and you've worked with so many other entrepreneurs. I wonder how often do you see that quality in entrepreneurs that you had back then, which is, I'm here to prove you wrong.
Well, I wasn't really there to prove him wrong initially. I was there to save him wasting his time. You know, like you can't be serious looking for a good salesperson in the top 10% of this school. Are you kidding me? There aren't any. So he started asking some more questions, asked me if I wanted to take a test, and I said, okay, I'll take a test. And he took it. I told him I was going to go get a sandwich first, and maybe if you're still here when I come back, I'll take your test, which I did, and he marked it right away. And he says, "You need to come to our branch office and take another test and meet some people." And I said, "Okay." So it worked out pretty good, but in no way did I or anyone else on the planet think that I was IBM material. That was like just too weird for words. So anyway, where were we? What was the question?
I guess that was a question about what,
The idea of being a maverick.
yeah.
Yes. I guess I've always been a maverick. I've always been rebellious. If you tell me about a rule, I'll find six ways to break it and get away with it. Right? That's always been my MO. But in business, there are certain rules that can't be broken. Like you can't run out of cash. That's number one, right? So yes, I've always been kind of rebellious, and I think the question was looking for other people like that. I would have to say no, because there can only be one rebel, and that's me. Everybody else has to toe the line. Okay, I'm in charge here, and we're going to do this my way.
So this is
So
for your companies running your own show. I guess my question was,
yes,
because you've been mentoring so many entrepreneurs,
Ah,
do you see that quality in them often, or is that just a fluke that you lucked out? Or maybe entrepreneurs are different today than they were when you were starting off.
I don't really see it that much. Uh, what you see, there's so much more awareness of startups nowadays, and schools you can go to, and mentors you can get, and they're all singing the same tune that here are the rules. All right. So you don't find too many startup people being mavericks in that regard. They're being told consistently that there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. So no, I wouldn't think so.
So thinking about yourself breaking rules, would you say that that's true? Are we teaching entrepreneurship wrong if we tell them there are rules to follow, or is this
Well,
just how the
what
game is different?
I can tell them what the rules are now because the rules have been established over so many years. But when I started out, there weren't any rules. I mean, there was no such thing as a startup.
Mhm.
That concept didn't exist. It was basically you're going to go into business. All right. There was no VCs, no angel investors, none of that startup stuff at all, no mentors or anything. So I just had to figure it out on my own,
Yeah,
which
which you
I'm
did.
okay with. Yeah.
Uh, the other thing that from before you started your first startup, I guess, because I'm really intrigued by your trajectory, and I think I agree with you that the world is different than it was before, right? With VC money, startup awareness, all that. Um, but there's a common advice I give students when they come to me with, I have an idea, about an industry doing this or that, whatever. And I usually tell them something that you ended up doing intuitively, which is getting hired by IBM before you went to become a programmer and write your own code, which is if you want to disrupt an industry or at least be a successful entrepreneur in an industry, you have to know the industry. And so getting hired in a company within the industry you want to enter or disrupt is probably a better way to get paid for, to learn how the industry works and what your leverage point could be, as opposed to getting money, burning it, and learning by doing. And you actually have a really great quote here about your IBM job. Say, we were given the secrets of how the business work, and not only that, we were taught by the best company on earth how to make money and how to use computers and how to make even more money. And they're paying me a nice salary while telling me all their secrets.
Isn't that
So
wonderful?
I know, right?
Yeah, they were the best training company on the planet at the time. They were right there with Xerox at the time as the two best sales trainers. So, but I had no concept at all about computers when I was in college. This is 1964. Computers were big things hidden behind rooms, air conditioned. You couldn't get into them. All
Mhm.
right. So no, when I was graduating from college, I either wanted to be a race car driver or a pool shooter. How about that for high paying jobs? All right. And then this door opens in my face, and it's like the whole world changes. It was truly the door of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So once I started getting the training at IBM and became successful at selling their gear, my entrepreneurial spirit came back and I said, I want to get my own computer. I'll rent it from IBM and I'll share time on it with a bunch of other companies. And that's the way it started. So I left IBM to get a job as a programmer because I didn't really know the depths of programming. We got the principles, but I never really wrote production programs. So I took a job as a programmer without ever having been a programmer and writing Fortran in a commercial environment, which is like madness, but I didn't know any better. So I just did it. And after a year of that, the president of the company came to me and he said, I want you to look at these annual reports for these service companies, computer service companies. His company was in computer hardware, little bits and bobs of stuff, delay lines, pulse transformers, technical stuff, right? And I could see that he wanted to diversify. So I said, well, you know, I can see where you're going with this, but I'd have to call a conflict of interest right now because I was going to leave here in a couple of months and start my own service bureau. And he says, why don't we do it together? I'll back you. You make it happen. I said, fine. And we agreed on 20%. And 7 years later, after building a really marvelous business, 3 shifts a day, running payrolls, all kinds of stuff, uh, he died. And there was no written agreement. So the board said, we don't know anything about this. So I said, sayonara. And down the road I went. So yeah, it was a major success, but a stupid, stupid failure on my part, not getting it in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also, I guess, kind of commented, and I think you already mentioned this in our conversation in so many words, is back then there were no real mentors, or the mentorship wasn't really a thing.
Right.
And your mantra is, say, be who you needed when you were younger.
Isn't that a beautiful thought?
Yeah, I just love that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we have
that's
we have
great.
a handful of mentors listening in to this conversation. So I really like that. Be who you needed when you were younger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now that you are a mentor and
Yes.
you're seeing so many young, fresh faces.
Well, I wouldn't say so many. Over the years, over the last 20 some years, it's been many, but I don't advertise. I'm not trying to hold myself out as the guy that has all the answers. All right. You know, I have a life. I'm retired. So right now I'm dealing with probably 2 or 3 individuals that are in startup mode, you know, but over the years, probably more than 100. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
It's a way to stay involved without all the stress. You
Yes.
know, I can watch other people step on landmines.
So I'm curious, kind of thinking about that transition over a span of, well, a handful of decades from being an entrepreneur to the mentor you wished you had. If
Yes.
if you have had yourself as a mentor, would you
Huh.
have listened? Being the maverick that you were, what do you think you would have listened?
Well, if the guy told me to get it in writing, I sure as hell would have gotten it in writing. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that's just such common sense, right?
yeah,
But I was just so busy, so involved, so focused on making the business a success that nothing else really mattered. I was addicted to it. All right. And we're talking a 3 shift a day operation that, you know, computers would go down at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd drive 30 miles to get down there and figure it out and put it back together again. So it was just a totally addictive. And I think that's the case with so many startup entrepreneurs, the founders, is that they just get totally addicted to doing the thing. All right. There's a famous book called uh, The E-Myth, and the author describes working on the business as opposed to in the business. And I think so many founders, and I've certainly been guilty of this, is they're working in the business. They don't take the 30,000 foot level view of what's going on here and create the business in the way it needs to be built. they're just stuck in it, you know, and that's not a formula for success, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Um, I wanna pause maybe for a minute and see if anyone else has any questions they want to ask based on what we've chatted so far. Um, before I take us to your next chapter, which is on again, you're leaving IBM and starting a string of startups essentially. Um, Does anybody here want to unmute and ask a question?
Yeah, I will.
Hi, Rick.
Hey. So, Mike, you and I both know that there were no mentors and there was no business model canvas or anything like that back then. We had to teach ourselves. We never talked about this, so I'm curious. Did customer discovery come naturally to you? Did you realize back then that you needed to get out there and talk to customers and understand what they needed as you were initially developing the products for these companies, or was that something that didn't come to mind back then? Just I'm curious about customer discovery way back in the day.
Well, it's an interesting term, customer discovery. I, I always just looked at it as sales. You got to get out there and knock on a bunch of doors and talk to people and say, this is what I got, and it costs this much, and when can you when can you write me a check? You know, so but discovery, no. I think customer discovery comes as a subset of just knocking on doors and talking to customers,
But did
getting
you,
out of the building, right?
yeah, for sure. But did you do that before you started developing, or you developed first and then started going out and talking to customers?
Well, the TeleMagic thing, I had one customer that I was doing custom programming for, and I could see that what he needed didn't exist. And I told him that. And I said, what you need, and I described it, the typical CRM that we know today. And I said, I can write this for you. It's going to cost you $5,000, but I'm going to own it and continue to sell it to other people. But you get all the improvements for free and free support. And he says, deal. So that was the beginning of that. But it wasn't like I was talking to a bunch of companies and said, what do you need? Uh, I think it's the Jobs quote that customers don't know what they need until we show it to them. All right. And once I started showing this TeleMagic to people, they all just went, wow, sign me up. I need it. And and sales just went like this, and the price kept going up as well. And it was really a case of product market fit, but without doing the research ahead of time. I mean, it was a hit. So, but other things, other products, maybe like PAL, uh, that was different. That was 15 years ahead of time. Nobody had any concept of using a touch-tone telephone as a computer terminal, all right? Let alone for stuff that they do every day. So computers at that time, back in 1980, they were just mystery to everybody, and everybody was afraid of them, you know. Uh, so there was no customer research there. It was just a de facto the fact that uh, there's this yellow pages in everyone's home, and everybody always goes to the yellow pages. The concept was if I gave them a computerized uh, alternative to the yellow pages, I could make a ton of money. But the problem was the education factor required to get people to think along those lines was enormously expensive. So I didn't take that into consideration when I had my partner said he was going to put up that money. I was going to invent something and we'd both make a lot of money. That was his proposition, right? said, what do you want me to invent? He says, I have no idea. You just invent it. I'll back you. We'll make a lot of money. And I said, well, thank you. All right, let's do that. And I sat down with a clean sheet of paper, uh, yellow pad, and I sat there with the yellow pad for a month outlining my idea of a perfect business, a perfect business. And number one on the list was no employees. No employees at all. I can't stand employees. They're nothing but trouble. Number two, no receivables. I hate trying to collect money. And it's going to turn into bad debts anyway. So I want the cash now up front. Number three, no inventory. Number four, on and on. A monopoly. I want to build a monopoly. All right, from Jump Street. And of course, we know now Google has that monopoly, but I was 15 years ahead of time. I was also the only one in that business, so I was kind of a monopoly, but nobody knew enough to get into it. In any case, let's get back to some questions.
I appreciate you sharing a lot of the insight, Michael. And I think for people who haven't read the book yet or haven't looked up your history, again, maybe kind of worth noting how throughout your career from I guess when you were about to finish college, you write that your intention was to become an insurance salesperson. And then
That
you
was the alternative to becoming a race car driver or a
yes.
pool shooter. Right?
And
There's
then you
definitely more money in insurance.
and then you became a salesperson for IBM. And
Right.
then essentially when you end up, starting PAL, the software essentially is a sales channel for businesses, right? It's advertising for businesses trying to increase their sales. When
Right.
you ended up in TeleMagic, it was again how businesses can be more efficient in increasing their sales. So I think it feels like salesmanship has been a very strong thread throughout your career, and maybe it's not surprising that businesses, like you said, the number one rule of business is you can't run out of cash, and the only way
Right.
to not run out of cash is get more sales. And so I think that thread seems to run through your entire career quite beautifully, if in that sense.
Well, I was lucky when I started the TeleMagic chapter. I was lucky in that the product was for entrepreneurs and salespeople. And I was very heavy in experience in those two areas. And the other thing was that I didn't have to hire a programmer because I already had lots of programming experience. So those three areas of expertise were already available within me. So I didn't have to hire a co-founder, right? I didn't have to get VC money to be able to buy programmers to build the product. I could build the product in my spare time. And basically, that's what I did. One of my mantras is don't give up your day job when you're starting a business, right? You need the cash coming in. So I would program on nights and weekends for the product, but I would still keep my day job as an independent computer programmer and go help a bunch of different businesses during the day. So, yeah.
And I think again, I would say it's still very, valid advice that if one wants to start a business, find your own strength first instead of trying to solve a problem by paying someone else to do it for you.
Right,
That's
right.
expensive.
And the best advice everybody gives you today is have a co-founder,
Mhm.
right? If you're a business guy, you need a technical co-founder and vice versa. Well, I had all three going for me, so I didn't really need a co-founder. And I was just coming out of bankruptcy anyway from the PAL adventure. So I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a VC backer. I didn't have any savings. I didn't have a co-founder. I broke all the rules and it worked out great.
Mhm. I I have a quote I'm going to read you from the book, but maybe I'll open up before that transition and see if anyone else
Yes.
has any questions or they want to chime in. I think there was a chat
Yeah,
question. How can someone turn many creative business ideas into a successful, sustainable venture when they have little or no startup capital?
I had zero capital when I started TeleMagic. All right. In fact, I didn't have any credit cards at all. There was nothing that I could fall back on. Uh, and the best way to do it is just go out and sell your idea. I mean, I sold the idea of TeleMagic or a CRM to a business person that I knew and that I was already helping. And if you can't sell it, I think you got the wrong idea.
Yeah. Yeah, which in essence is again kind of going back to Rick's comment is what customer discovery is about. If nobody seems to say this is yeah, here's my money, solve it, then you're probably trying to talk to the wrong person or solve the wrong problem or both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Hi Ken, I see you're
Hi,
unmuted.
Lon. Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you. I heard a lot of great things. It's refreshing to hear somebody who kind of built things in a bootstrapped way, focused so much on the fundamentals, cash is king, all that stuff. What are your thoughts on the extreme prevalence of venture-backed businesses now? It seems to be almost the default pathway that entrepreneurs follow when I talk to student entrepreneurs. They're like, I need to raise money, I need to raise money. Whereas you have a very different approach. Personally, I agree with that approach. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how the culture around startup creation has really shifted towards using other people's money?
Well, the idea that you have to raise money, whose idea is that? Where's that coming from? It's coming from the VCs. All right. They want to ride on your energy and knowledge, okay, with just a little bit of money. And bootstrapping, in my mind, is really the only way to go. The longer you can bootstrap, the less of your business you're going to have to give up if and when you do need money. I never sold a share. I never had anybody involved. I didn't even give stock options to employees. Uh, Not that I wanted it all. It's just that I felt that that was kind of a scam. All right, at the time. So yeah, I think that venture capital is really the last thing you want, and a lot of budding entrepreneurs look at venture capital getting funded as the success. But that's just the beginning, and you've already put yourself in the hole. So the longer you can go with bootstrapping, better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wanna
yeah, Lon, I have a question. It's Ian.
Yeah, hi
Uh,
Ian.
really, really interesting points you made, Michael, a few minutes ago, and that was the in versus on. You work in the building or in the business or on the business. What
Yes.
what what advice would you have for your younger self today on that point? Like I think on the business is somehow effectively managing the day to day and the longer term, and wrapped up in that is sort of the work life balance equation that doesn't always cut very favorably to founders. But what advice would you give yourself from X number of decades ago that might have put you in a better position to understand that at least?
Well, I think the first thing that definitely that I recommend to founders is to start building a board of advisors first. Build the business from the top down, right? You don't want to be the only guy in the room when you're figuring stuff out. I think having a structure, if you look at every successful business on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, whatever, they all have a board of directors. They all meet monthly or quarterly or whatever. I mean, there's a structure to building a business, to running a business. My suggestion is to start with a board of advisors. Even though you don't have a board of directors, you want people that have your best interests in mind. And there's a very famous principle called the mastermind principle that I think it's Napoleon Hill started that concept that if you put two or more people in a room together uh, with similar idea, similar goals, something magical happens. It's more than just two people. It's a mastermind principle that evolves. All right. So, and I think another major mistake that founders make is that they might have advisors, but they silo the advisors. Oh, I'll call this guy for technical stuff. I'll call this guy for sales. But they need to be all in the same room together or on the same Zoom video or whatever at the same time. So that's a very founding principle that I recommend in all cases.
Yeah, that's great
Matter of
advice.
fact, Rick was one of those guys that I asked to be on my founding board of advisors on an idea that I had. And we worked on it for a couple of months and I decided to abandon it. All right. Thank you very much for your help, Rick. But it just didn't have legs. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And that reminds me the Steve Jobs quote you have in the book on success is going through 1,000 ideas you choose to not pursue. So you're not wasting your time and effort going in the wrong path.
That's one of the most fun things that you see startup founders come to advisors like me with. I've got two ideas and I'm looking for funding for both. Absolutely not. Pick one. Right?
Yeah.
So nobody's going to invest in one founder doing two different things. That's madness, right? So yeah, focus, focus, focus.
So I'm keeping an eye on the watch, and I know we have just under 20 minutes left, and there are 2 points I'm hoping to kind of weave through in our conversation. And the first one of the two is and again, I'm kind of reading from your book on, and this is in as part of the TeleMagic, the early days of TeleMagic, and again, building software for customer relationship management. So you write, the best software is written by a small team of egoless programmers who can truly listen to and deliver what the customers need, not what the programmers want to do. And I find that extremely striking. My colleague Ken, who just here asking the question, and myself are teaching engineering design, and the need to remind students that listening to the customer and building what they need, not what you want, is the path to good work, good design, and good outcomes. And I see a lot of it resonate in your statement here.
I'm so glad you picked up on that. Removing the ego from what it is that you're doing. All right. I'm not the customer. I might be a customer, but I'm not. I have to find out what the customer wants. This concept of being egocentric runs through that book of my failures or problems or hiccups or whatever. And it's all about ego. I remember writing some stuff for TeleMagic. I said, this is a great idea. I'm going to do this. And I would sweat bullets writing that feature nobody ever used. All right. I never asked the customer if they wanted it or how they would use it. All right. And yet I spent a lot of time doing something that was completely meaningless. So again, taking the ego out of product development, it's all about the customer.
So again, kind of flipping the question now about you being a mentor, seeing young entrepreneurs pursuing. When people come to me and say, I'm thinking of starting a business, I want advice or run an idea by you. Very often I ask them, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And there are different reasons, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I don't want to say they're right or wrong reasons, but they're reasons that might lead to better outcomes long term, considering what's at stake. Um, have you seen or what's your impression of the current, again, most recent couple of decades of entrepreneurs that you see out on the ground? Are we pulling the wrong type of people who are egocentric and not egoless into the folds? Is there a better way to either teach them other than through hard work? Is the part of the messaging, is the VC money attracting the right or the wrong type of people? What do you see in motivation for people to want to pursue entrepreneurs these days?
Well, I think one of the biggest and stupidest things that entrepre entrepreneurs get into the game with is that, well, if Zuckerberg can do that, anybody can do it. All right, I can do it. I mean, what's Zuckerberg got that I don't have? Right? And they have an idea, and they figure, well, that'll work. But they're almost always software guys. They think that they can build a product. And it's not just building the product, it's selling the product, right? They get all wrapped up in product development and they figure if I do this next feature, the whole world is going to throw money at me. And it's just not the case. In fact, the fewer the features you have in your MVP, the more you're going to learn. Get it out there quickly, right? So, yeah, there's a whole world of techies out there that think that if Zuckerberg can do it, I can do it. And I've got an idea. And they just completely forget about the total addressable market, you know, getting a board established first. If you can't recruit a board, how are you going to recruit anybody? All right. So again, it's storytelling. If you can't tell the story to a board member to get them to help you, if you can't tell the story to a customer, why even bother programming it? All right. The story comes before the product, in my mind. It's a beautiful book called What Great Salespeople Do. And it's all about storytelling. Right? That's what sales is storytelling. So if
So
you're going to recruit a co-founder or a VC or whatever, you need to be able to tell a story. And typically those two things that does not coexist typically with a technical programmer type founder.
mhm.
They need to learn that. They got to grok it.
I'm smiling because I know what my slides presenting next the next guest on the Germinator is going to talk to me about, and it's exactly this point. So I'll swing to that in about 10 minutes. But I cannot agree more on the importance of storytelling. I will just gonna say I've seen and I've been in entrepreneurship education for a decade, just over a decade now. And I've seen the pendulum go on the other side, which is people have the impression that it's all about the storytelling, and they
Mm.
become great orators and they can do the best pitch, but there's nothing behind. There's no like you said, there's no egoless person behind them who wants to solve the problem for the client. It's all about them, so they're telling the best story they can to sell the story, not necessarily solve the problem. Um, so I think I've been privy to a few discussions on that question of how do we teach entrepreneurs to tell good stories without forgetting that there has to be some flesh behind it. It has to be real underneath the surface. It can't be a facade, all show but no substance.
I think the storytelling, the way you're describing it, comes in by telling great stories to VCs. My suggestion is tell the great stories to customers. You won't need VCs if you get good customers.
Yeah, that's true. I see somebody posted a question on the chat. There are a few common pieces in every entrepreneur's journey, especially in the initial stages, that are low work-life balance, high stress, and imposter syndrome. Is it true? And if so, what are ways to reduce these seemingly negative impacts?
Work-life balance, forget it. If you're not addicted to what you're building, you're in the wrong business. You got the wrong mindset. All right. That's why you see so many young guys being in startups, is that they don't have a mortgage. They don't have, 5 kids that they got to put through school. All right. So there's no work-life balance. Uh, what was the other
The other one
two, three things in there?
yeah, high stress and imposter syndrome.
High stress goes with the territory. That's the only reason I sold the company, TeleMagic. The stress was killing me. If My mind was, if I can't sell this within a year, I'm going to walk away from it because this is killing me, right? And I was pretty close to walking away, but I got lucky. I sold it. All right. And the other is imposter syndrome. Every day, every day, I would think, why hasn't Apple or IBM or Oracle built this product? Because it's so obvious to me that this belongs on every computer. Every business person, every salesperson, every entrepreneur, they need this software. That's what made it so easy to sell. But why hasn't IBM or Microsoft or Apple or Oracle, why haven't they built this? Imposter syndrome. Why me? How come
Yeah.
how come I'm getting away with this? Like I'm sneaking under the radar. No, I'm not, because by the time that I got around to selling it, I had, I don't know what, 100 competitors at least. All right. So it wasn't under the radar. They just had their own agenda. So, yeah, imposter syndrome, absolutely. You
Yeah.
just got to put your head down and just keep going forward. Stress goes with the territory. Quality of life, forget it.
I see that Ladan or Ladane?
Yeah, it's Laudan. Yeah, I
Ladan.
just
Love.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for your for sharing your experience. I really appreciate it. I already posted my questions in the chat box, but I can just say it again here. I'm coming from a technical background, and when I think about like having my own company and starting a business, I have questions about like how to be like relevant to what you said, being on like having a bird view kind of things on the business instead of like being in the business and getting
Yes.
lost in the jungle kind of thing. Uh, I'm thinking like how I can just divide the responsibility and the leadership when like I'm thinking of having a co-founder. What kind of responsibility should goes toward the other co-founders or co-founder, and what should I focus is like given the context that I come from a technical background and I don't know that much of the business sides of the business.
Well, that's the kind of co-founder that you want, is somebody that's going to offset your, excuse the word, deficiencies, right? Yeah. You want somebody else's strengths to offset your weaknesses, right? And again, this is part of the storytelling. If you need a co-founder, if you're purely technical, all right. But if you can't tell the story of what's in your mind and where you want to go and why this is so important, if you can't tell that story powerfully enough, you can't recruit. All right. So recruiting, it's one of my mantras, always be recruiting. Always be recruiting, right? You can't grow without people, good salespeople, good technical people, good customer service people, good administrative people, all right? Good people in shipping and receiving. You know, it's all about recruiting. Board of
Yeah,
advisors.
yeah, thank you. It's just like having those at first, or because when I think about co-founders, is like we are developing the idea, and then this next step will be like what kind of like people or expertise we need, and then we go on and hire those people. My question was like more of a like very initial phase of that. Like I really understand that you said like business wise. So if you only have been dealt with the technical issues, or you know what kind of project in terms of the technical you're gonna build, you need a co-founder that it is like it's experts in like business and in sales probably, and then you go like hire people that you need. Is that what you meant, or am I wrong here?
We think it starts with the idea. All right. What is the big idea? All right. And everything falls from that. All right. So if you've got a great idea in your mind and you can express it to other people in such a way that they say, wow, that's great. All right. Now you're on your way to recruiting a co-founder that's going to be able to, you know, offset
Yeah.
your weaknesses. So it's the idea and then expressing it powerfully so that you can attract everything that you need, from VCs to co-founders to your first salesperson or whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why you would want a business or sales and marketing co-founder, is because it has been said many times that the CEO is the number one salesperson in the business. And you can't delegate sales. That's got to be first and foremost. That's where you get the cash. That's where you get the market acceptance. The market acceptance gets you the VC money, on and on. So
So
Thank you so
great
much.
question. Thank you.
yeah, I guess in a nutshell, it's never too early to look for a co-founder if you need one. But alternatively, you can do what Michael did, which is learn your skills yourself. Right? So you can try to learn the skills as much as you can, and then find the person that has the skills you don't want to learn or can't learn.
Well, look at the Google story. Those two founders were roommates, random roommates. All right. And they didn't have any sales and marketing chops at all. That's where what's his name?
The
Who'd they
third guy,
hire? Pardon?
the third guy was
Yeah, the
uh
third guy.
I forgot the name.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure Rick knows.
No.
Uh, Schmidt. Eric Schmidt,
Okay.
right? Yeah. He was brought in as the CEO guy
Yeah.
with sales and marketing experience. Uh, there was a quotation I've been noodling on for the last several days, and it's the opening lines to Anna Karenina, that all families are happy in the same way, but all unhappy families are unhappy in their own unique way. And I thought about that and I said, but I wonder if that applies to startups. And because there's almost a million ways that you can screw up a startup. But if you're going to truly win, I think that you got to hit certain bases absolutely. And sales and marketing and product development and finance and all the rest of that. But so you need to have everything going for you in order to win. But there's a million different ways that you can kill it.
Yeah.
All right. So all startups are successful in the same way, but all unsuccessful startups fail in their own unique way.
Yeah.
So I thought, hey, that's really a smart thing to think, and I like that. So I Googled it. There's a principle called the Karenina principle that already states that. And I don't know how long it's been there, but I never heard of it. I thought I invented something.
Yeah.
No.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
I see Barb has her hand raised. So Barb, I'll let you have the last question and then we'll wrap up our conversation.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been enlightening and always interesting to see people who are out there trying to sell technology. I learned PL1 as my first programming language, and I'm a business prof now, trying to get my business students to learn that more. My question is, how are you guiding the students through your entrepreneurs through all of the fragmentation that's happening out there? How are you starting that conversation?
Fragmentation in what way?
So all of the different options of what they can have, right? Like AI is giving us so many tools and
Oh,
choices. Yeah.
it's madness. I mean, myself, I'm still doing program using Cursor and chat or GPT-5. Uh, but the learning curve to just get into Cursor and do some vibe programming is amazingly complex compared to the way it was when I first started writing TeleMagic. All right. So there's so many options now that I don't really try to guide the tech guy into one stack or another. They probably already have that figured out. And they're gonna figure it out from talking to other techies that they're familiar with or doing research or whatever. So again, I think there's more than one way to skin that cat of technical stack. So I stay out of it because that's really not the determining factor for success in the business.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's tell the story to the customers and it'll work the way out. What I find some of my students, they get listening to some expert who they think is guiding them in the right way. Have you seen that out there?
Yeah, and I guess that reinforces my point about not siloing your advisors, bringing them all together in this one meeting to come up with a consensus of opinion. All right. But if you silo people, you're going to be going off in different directions all the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for the question, Barb. I would like to first, Michael, thank you for a great conversation. And I honestly think we could have gone for 3 hours and not even lose our momentum. And I still haven't asked anything about your pool table behind you, which has probably lots of other stories. I checked your YouTube channel, and the most viewed videos you have are of billiard game or pool games, more so
Yeah,
than the TeleMagic commercial. So I'm already intrigued. So maybe we'll pin that for another future conversation.
that would be
wanna
great.
I want to circle back to my guest for next time, Keith McIntyre, and is right on topic with what you just said, Michael, about telling a story and how tech people really struggle. Keith McIntyre is a local person from the Okanagan. He's based in Kelowna. I'm pretty sure Kelowna, or West Kelowna. And he created a ski crumb, which is a tracker for people going on the ski hill where you go outside of the range of your Apple AirTag and whatnot, and want to make sure where the kids are so they stay safe. So he's going to be my guest in 2 weeks, October 7th. Everyone is invited, and Keith and I will talk about what does it mean to lead with a story, not with a tech, because that's really how things get successful, exactly as you just said, Michael. So all that is available on my website and for people to register. So thank you so much for everyone who joined with great questions and great listening skills, and for Michael for sharing your story. And if you want to pick up a copy of Startup for Love and Money, it's available on Amazon. And I enjoyed reading it. And I was like, you can't be real. You actually did it and it worked. And apparently it did several times over. So thank you for sharing your story, Michael.
Thank you, Alon.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
brother.